What did your mother say that made your jaw drop?
While living in a foreign country, my water broke 6 weeks prematurely and I had to have a C-section with my footling breech son. The military hospital was not equipped with a neonatal service, so he was whisked away to a local German hospital. His condition changed and he was transported to another hospital for sick babies. My husband and I didn't speak much German, and trying to gain medical updates was a difficult challenge. The American hospital staff was uncooperative to communicate with the German hospital, so we didn't really know what was going on with his condition. I had to remain in the American hospital recovering from surgery. My husband had difficulty tracking down the location of my son since the transfers. It was all stressful and difficult to navigate. I kept fainting, was weak and had anxiety attacks in trying to figure out my newborn son's condition. It was confusing and very emotional for me. I called my mum from the hospital, she was in the USA, to share the news of her grandchild being born and the unknowingness of his condition, etc. I thought she would want to be informed. Her reply to me was, "Do you have anything else to bitch about?" My jaw dropped. I was confused as to how someone could be so insensitive to me at such a vulnerable and scary time. I didn't know if my son would live. I was living a foreign country with little communication skills and a 3-year-old at home. My mother-in-law reacted totally supportive and flew over to help out any way she could. My son recovered very well and is a healthy 32-year-old. He got married recently.
My mother was diagnosed with breast and lung cancer in 1999. At that time I was 34 years old. The diagnosis was a shock for myself and my 2 brothers. Our mother was the linchpin of the family. One brother took it in his stride, vowing to help and support her and our father when he could. My other brother took it badly and would not accept the terminal diagnosis. Me? I gave up work to take care of her so my dad could continue work to keep the house going. One day we were sat chatting about anything that was not related to cancer when suddenly my mum pops up with a statement that she has something she needs to get off of her chest. She reached into a knitting bag full of half-knitted garments she no longer had the strength to finish and handed me a photo. It was of herself and a tall man smiling away for the camera. "That's your father," she said. I looked at her, the photo, and back at her again. "I don't understand," I told her. My brain at this point was starting to spin. It definitely wasn't a photo of my dad. I was married before. "That's your real dad. Please don't hate me." To say I was stunned was an understatement. Looking back at my childhood, I realized there were some glaringly obvious signs, like the fact that Alec, second husband, was Anglo-Indian and both my brothers have darker skin tones than myself, think pale/freckles, yet I had never questioned it because Alec had never treated me any differently to the 2 boys. I told her I didn't hate her. What could I say? She was facing death. She told me the whole tale of marrying an abusive man who tried to punch and kick me out of her stomach when she was pregnant. She told me that when I was a baby she came home to find he had sold most of the furniture and broken into the electric meter. She said she had nothing and in that instant realized that for both of our safety she had to run. She went to my grandmother's where she left me in her care and took a sleeper train to London to look for work. While in London she met and subsequently married Alec while he was on leave from the Navy. She sent for me while pregnant with my brother. I questioned her about my father, but she clammed up and I realized that the memories this questioning was invoking was not helpful. I told her it made no difference to me, that I would always look on Alec as my father, and left it there. She implored me not to tell my brothers. My mum died 2 months later and only then did I begin to wonder about my real dad. Did he ever try to find me? Did I have siblings? Was he alive? I tried unsuccessfully to find him with the name on my birth certificate, but met with no success. Writing this has, to some extent, been cathartic. I hope I haven't bored anyone with my jaw-dropping experience.
My poor parents had lost a child the week before. I'd stayed on for a time after the funeral to help in any way I could. Mother, understandably, was nervous and somewhat of a wreck. She was determined not to lose any more children. When I said I'd take their dog for a walk, Mother looked anxiously out the window. "It's dark," she said. "You'd better take Dad with you." I was 60 years old at the time, so that gives you some idea of my father's age. I grew up at a time when you didn't talk back, roll your eyes, or speak condescendingly to a parent. So I stood trying to think of how best to reassure her without multiplying her worry. I gently assured her that I'd be all right. She assured me that she'd stand by the door and keep watch. "Don't go too far," she warned. Now, for the jaw-dropping issue. My parents lived in a retirement community. There wasn't a person alive within a mile of the place that posed even a minor threat. If one of the residents was in hot pursuit, 20 feet of power walking and I leave him gasping for breath. Then there was the bread incident. There were a few slices of bread left. I proposed going to the grocery store to pick up a few things, including bread. "It's a big store," Mother said. "You'll never find the bread. Better take Dad with you." Keep in mind that I'd been on my own many decades and had plumbed the depths and breadths of shopping at new grocery stores. What can you say to a poor woman who has just lost her child? Was I going to be churlish and sarcastic? There she stood wringing her hands, her brows were drawn and fretful. Once again I assured my mother that I'd be fine and hurried through the grocery shopping in order to return quickly. I knew that until I returned, Mother would stand by the window watching and waiting. There were more jaw-dropping incidents, but you get the drift. Mother did grow less fretful as the years went by. But there was always that certain unsettled look in her eyes. She was determined not to lose any of her remaining children.
When I was 19 or 20 I had a major crush on a Chinese girl who worked in a laboratory where I had a part-time job while in college. When she spurned me on asking for a date I got really depressed and had a couple days of those dark blues that only older teenagers and younger 20-year-olds have. My mom realized that I was emotionally hurting and asked what was wrong. Having always trusted my mom, I told her the real deal. She responded by launching into a racist tirade about Orientals being sneaky and how when I had kids someday she wanted them to be white kids and referred to this girl as a chink. I was jaw-dropped. She actually thought that her racist screed was endearing her to me. I did not respond to her vitriolic rant. But that was the exact instant where I not only stopped feeling any love for my mother but actually never even liked her as a person again. Till the day she died I was always considerate and thoughtful of things like birthdays and Mother's Day. I called and kept in touch after I moved out, but it was always a kind of cursory politeness. I never felt a true spark of love for my mother again. I know that might sound harsh, but she was a closet racist and I knew the moment those words left her lips that it was as if a crocodile had given birth to a dog. We could never bridge that divide and I would have been a liar and dishonest if I maintained a facade of still loving that woman. She was a dependable, solid and dedicated mother, but she was a bad human being.
What did my mother say that made my jaw drop? The last time we had my mom over before she passed away in December was when her furnace broke down in early November. Cold weather sometimes comes early here in Michigan. My niece, her husband, and their 2 young daughters had moved into her home so my niece could help take care of her. She was not yet sick but had recently had surgery on a pinched vertebrae. And she was 83 years old. She needed help. When the furnace broke down they all scattered to stay with various family members until a new one could be installed. We gladly took my mother in for 4 days. She requested us. Why? Because my husband treated her like a queen when she was here. He's an outstanding cook. Every morning he made her breakfast, ham and cheese omelette, homemade blueberry waffles, bacon, eggs over easy, etc. For dinner one night he made her favorite, French onion soup. It's what she wanted every time she came over. She practically insisted on it. He makes it better than any restaurant, it's one of his specialties. After dinner that night the 3 of us got to talking. My mom was reminiscing about my dad, who had passed in 2009. She told us a story about when they were young and one of my dad's friends made a pass at her. That didn't surprise me, my mom was a beauty. What did surprise me was her answer when I said, "Oh my gosh mom, what did you do?" Her reply? My sweet, soft-spoken, 83-year-old mother said, "Well, I should have kicked him in the slats." And, cue jaw drop. Slats, mother? I'd never in my life heard them referred to by that name, let alone by my mom. You could have knocked me over with a feather. Then I just about rolled on the floor laughing. And you could see it in my husband's face, his admiration for his mother-in-law grew tenfold that night. I will now and forevermore refer to them that way. you know, if the occasion ever arises for me to refer to them. Thanks for the great word, Mom.
She would kill me for writing this. Before she died, she was able to laugh at this, too. She had surgery and I stayed in her room with her. She had the dreaded little spirometer to keep her lungs clear. She was to use it often and she was using it none. I had to con her into doing 3 big breaths every hour and she was irritated with me. One morning as I walked toward her bed and the spirometer, I said, "Hey Mom, let's get this done before breakfast and I'll get you some coffee while we wait." I held the spirometer and said, "Come on, give me 3 big breaths." She grabbed her breasts and stuck out her chest saying, "Here are 2 of them." We never did figure out if it was from the anesthesia and pain meds or if she was just being a smartass. R.I.P. Moo.